we're going to fire projectiles at the mouse and then add a cooldown timer to slow down the rate at which they appear. So first of all, we're going to need a player, so we'll create a new scene. And I'm just going to drop in the Godot icon to be our player. We'll reset the transform of that back to 0, and that will do. Let's save our scene. Next, we're going to need a bullet scene, so we'll go to new scene, 2D, call this one bullet. And we're going to drop in the Godot icon again, reset the transform, and I'm going to scale this down so that we have a long thin bullet, and then we'll head into visibility and modulate, set it to black, and now we have a black bullet. Let's save it. So we're going to fire our projectiles when the user clicks their mouse. So let's head into project settings, input map. We'll add a new action called click. Hit the plus here, and we'll do it on mouse button, left button. Now we're going to need a script for the user to fire their projectile. So we'll add a new script here, hit create. So we're going to need a reference to our bullet to be able to fire it. So let's add an export variable here called bullet, and that's going to be a packed scene. So we'll save that. We can now head back into the editor, and you'll notice a bullet property here. So we can drag in our bullet scene, and that's what we're going to fire. Let's head back into our script. Then we're going to implement the process function, which is where we're going to handle the player input. So we'll just check if input dot is action pressed. And we're going to check that click action. And if so, we will call a function we're about to write called shoot. So let's implement that now. So we'll need to create an instance of our bullet. Let's call it shot. We will add it to our parent, which in a minute will be a level. So we'll do get parent, and we'll add a child called shot. Then we're going to need that shot to fire off in some direction. We haven't written that function yet, but let's pretend we have. Let's pretend our bullet has a function called shoot, and that's going to go from one position, which is going to be our player's current position, to the position of the mouse. And that should be everything. So now our bullet is going to need to implement this shoot function to actually be able to travel somewhere. So let's head over to our bullet, and we'll add a script to that as well. In here, we're going to need to know the direction to go in and also the speed to travel at. So we'll just add some properties for those. We'll just initialize this as vector2.0 because we'll work it out when we're told to shoot somewhere. And we'll add an export variable for the speed so we can configure it in the editor if we need to. Let's start it off with 1000. Now let's implement that shoot method we just saw. So it's going to go from one vector2 to another vector2. So the first thing we need to do here is set our position so that we spawn in the same place that the player is in. So that's going to be the from position. Then we need to work out that direction, which is just going to be from direction to 2. That will also normalize the direction for us. And then we can work out our rotation so that we head off in the right direction. And that is simply the direction dot angle. Finally, in here, we're going to need to implement the process function as well. I guess we can do this as physics process. And we just need to move along. So we're going to update our position. And we're going to do the direction times the speed times the delta. Let's see if this works. We're going to need a level for this to all happen in, so we're just going to make one more scene. And we'll call this one level. And we'll just drop our player into it. So move them somewhere in the middle. Save our scene as level. Hit play. So here's our player, and if I click, now we're shooting in any direction. As you can see, there are a load of bullets. This is the thing we want to fix so that we aren't firing them at such a high rate. So one way to do this is by adding a timer. So we'll head back into our player, and we're going to add a new node, and we'll look for timer. Here we go. Let's call this Cooldown Timer. Over here we can set the time that it's going to be between each shot. So let's start off with I don't know, half a second. This is going to be a one-shot timer because we don't want it to keep firing continually. Let's head back into our script. So all we need to do here is we need to check if as well as checking that the player has clicked, we also want to check that our timer has stopped. Let's quickly add a variable for our timer. So we can add a on ready. So we can check if cooldown timer is stopped. So if it's stopped, if the timer is finished, then we're going to shoot. And then the only other thing we need to do is in our shoot method, we can start the timer. So each time we shoot, when the user clicks, we'll fire our shot, we'll start the timer, and then we won't be able to fire again until the timer has stopped. Let's check this out. So now I'm holding down the mouse button, and you can see I'm only firing every half a second. That seems like a little too slow, so let's head back into the editor. We can change the wait time here. Let's try every 0.1 seconds. And there we go, that's a better rate than we had previously. We'll go a little bit higher, but we're going to. There we are.